49ers football, it's torture. Just like the San Francisco Giants from last decade, right? Isn't this giving you guys those kind of vibes? 2010, 2012, 2014, three World Series championships. I know many of you may not be baseball fans. Some of you are probably the dreaded 49ers Dodger fan combination, but even then, you'll probably still get it. This 49ers team is good for television, but boy, they're bad for blood pressure. That was crazy, and it's 2 straight weeks of elimination game insanity for the 49ers because that Rams game was an elimination game. It was a playoff game. The Saints were winning. The 49ers had to find a way to beat the Rams. They pushed that to the very limit. Serious procrastination from the 49ers. This one, they pushed to the limit in the other direction. They jumped out in front of the Dallas Cowboys. But then at the end of the game, they almost blew it. And through so many ups and downs this season, I mean, the emotional roller coaster has been insane. The 49ers have figured out a way to keep on getting it done. And now they're going to head to Green Bay because they've beaten Dallas. And for all of the people complaining about this win, road playoff wins don't grow on trees. That's only the 6th one in 49ers franchise history. Let's go back through them. 1970, John Brody leads the 49ers over the Vikings. The week after that, they lose to these Dallas Cowboys on the road in the NFC Championship game. So that's playoff win number 1 for the 49ers. You have to go forward 18 years to find number 2. And that was after they had won 2 Super Bowls. That was in 1988 when the 49ers went on the road and beat the Chicago Bears. That was in those really freezing temperatures at Soldier Field. So that was Joe Montana's win, right? 1 for Brody, 1 for Montana. The Steve Young era didn't have a road playoff win. Right? The 1990s didn't have a road playoff win for the 49ers. The 2000s didn't have a road playoff win. You had to go all the way to 2012 when Colin Kaepernick led the 49ers back from a 17-0 deficit to beat the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC Championship game for number 3. And then Kaepernick led 2 more the following season. 1 at Green Bay, where the 49ers play on Saturday night. Mark that on your calendars if you don't know yet. And then 1 the following week at Carolina. So that was 5 road playoff wins entering this game. Same amount as of road playoff wins as the 49ers have Super Bowl rings. So that should show you these aren't easy to come by. Number 6 came against Dallas, and it was a team win. Jimmy Garoppolo contributed. The 49ers defense certainly contributed. That's who I wrote about. The headline is the 49ers defense smothers the Cowboys, setting up a chance for atonement at Green Bay. The 49ers special teams unit didn't really contribute as much as it should have. Oh my God, that's a disaster right now. And the only saving grace moving forward is that the Green Bay special teams, they're actually ranked worse than the 49ers. I'll get to it in a second. But the 49ers offense and defense overcame a really bad special teams performance. Was it pretty from the offense for the 49ers near the end of this game? No, I don't think it was particularly pretty from the defense too. They were bleeding yardage there at the end. But the 49ers did enough to get it done. And that's perspective. You know, this is also perspective. The 49ers went into Dallas and beat the number 1 DVOA team on the road. That was the number 1 team analytically in football. The 49ers weren't expected to win this game. I mean, I predicted them to win by 3, but not everybody did. Vegas didn't think so. 49ers were 3-point underdogs. So the fact they went into the road and did something that's rare. They won that road postseason game, and they beat the Cowboys of all teams. Should have people over the moon. Some of the negativity out there that I just took a glimpse at on Twitter is weird. There's some people that try to be trendy. Oh, you know, like I'm calling the team out. It's like, you're not doing anything. You're sounding clueless. You sound like you don't have perspective. If you have perspective, you recognize the value of a road playoff win when you see one. And this was it. The 49ers renewed the rivalry with Dallas and got a massive, massive victory to set up the game against Green Bay next week. Now, this is really a microcosm of the 1990s. First, the 49ers had a dispatch of the Cowboys in the 90s, and then they had a dispatch of the Packers. Well, congratulations. Now the 49ers get them in a 1-week span, really a 6-day span. 49ers playing the Cowboys and then Green Bay. So I have a few talking points to go through, but there is one important question to address. Tell us about Warner and Bosa availability for next week, please. Based on some sources, based on some conversation that I've had, and with Fred Warner, this was just said out on the press conference. This was just said out in public. I think the 49ers are optimistic about having both Nick Bosa and Fred Warner back next week. It's a concussion for Bosa. He obviously has to clear protocol. And then for Fred Warner, it sounds like the similar type of ankle injury as he suffered earlier this season, I believe against Minnesota. And Warner was back the next week. He might have missed one practice. Or did he miss? No, I think Warner did miss a game. Yes. He missed the game against Seattle. But if that were a playoff game, or if that were something with the stakes that we're going to see next week in Green Bay, Warner would have played. So I think the 49ers feel okay about those two players right now. We're going to get a more thorough update tomorrow on Monday. And I know for everybody now, even those on the West Coast, unless you're in Hawaii, it's already Monday. That's why we call this late night Lombardi, after midnight. So I'm going to get to some more questions later, but first I want to go through some of the talking points. And obviously a huge one is the 49ers overcame the losses of Nick Bosa and Fred Warner to get this done. And that's the sign of a good football team. So, hey, not only do they go on the road, win this postseason playoff game away from home against the Dallas Cowboys of all team, their historical nemesis. We talked all week about, how tough this rivalry has been. And just because they hadn't played in a couple decades in the postseason doesn't mean that it didn't mean a lot to a whole lot of people. And the 49ers made sure that historically they had their players tethered in perspective. And then they went out there and they beat the Cowboys, and they beat them at Jerry World. And they did it in front of a worldwide audience. I guarantee you people from across the globe were watching this. I mean, this is America's team. I put quotes around it because I'm making fun of it. But the 49ers went there and they put a hurt on the Cowboys, who obviously had gotten a little too high off of beating NFC East competition. By the way, Dak Prescott is 25-7 against the NFC East in his career, and 28-27 against everyone else. 1-3 in the playoffs. So preemptively, I don't check too many Twitter mentions these days after the games because I'm too busy. But preemptively, because I know there's going to be a lot of complaining about Jimmy Garoppolo. If you actually wanted to see poor quarterback play today, all you had to do was watch the Cowboys quarterback. Dak Prescott was horrifically inaccurate. He couldn't deal with the 49ers pressure. They hit him 14 times. He was queasy in the pocket. The throws were just off target. That goes back to inaccuracy. And obviously he was terribly unclutch. Yes, it was a wild ending. And yes, this was a game that, Dallas is upset that the official ran into their center. But Dallas set themselves up for that. They had no timeouts with 14 seconds left, and they're running by design with the quarterback to the middle of the field. Are you kidding me? Okay, I get it. You're trying to set up a 25-yard shot to the end zone as opposed to a Hail Mary. You're being greedy. But when you're being greedy, be ready to face the consequences of being greedy. And one of the potential consequences of being greedy with 14 seconds left is the clock might run out on you because you don't have timeouts. And the clock ran out on the Cowboys. So the fact that they're blaming the officials for false start penalties, which are just total procedure penalties, in their own house. There were so many 49ers fans there again. It was like at least 35,000, maybe 40,000 of the 93,000 in attendance were 49ers fans. It was so loud when the Cowboys had the ball that it probably created some of those procedure penalties. But there's no excuse for procedure penalties in your own house. And there's no excuse for running out of time with 14 seconds left when you didn't have timeouts after you ran a designed run. Don't blame the officials. Blame your own stupidity. They literally ran the ball up the middle of the field. Think about that, with their quarterback with 14 seconds left and no timeouts. This is not a game that the refs lost the Cowboys. And then, Dak Prescott shouldn't be getting a pass for this. He seemed to me that he encouraged throwing objects at the officials in his post-game press conference. Dak Prescott is saying people shouldn't throw stuff at the fans. At the players. He said fans shouldn't throw stuff at the players. And then somebody said, well, they're throwing stuff at the officials. And then Dak Prescott said, oh, well, okay, I support them in doing that. What are you talking about? franchise quarterback, any player shouldn't be condoning fans throwing stuff at the officials. Yes, officials make mistakes. Nobody should ever have stuff thrown at them. I mean, I thought that was absurd. But anyway, that's related to the point. But the main point is that the officiating wasn't the story of this game. It was ugly at the end. The 49ers probably have some reason to have a gripe about it, given how long it took the refs to decide to move back that Debo Samuel run an inch, and then the Trent Williams false start, obviously. But obviously, they're not complaining about it. They won this game. At the end of the day, this was a hard fought, ugly playoff game that the 49ers won in torturous fashion. And that was that. They executed better than Dallas, who, in my opinion, threw up all over themselves on that last drive. Again, they ran the ball with 14 seconds left and no timeouts. When you do that, you deserve what you have coming for you. That's absolutely, I thought, what happened to Dallas there at the end. Somebody here the Chad says that it came down to McCarthy versus Shanahan. Absolutely. I think that Shanahan outcoached Mike McCarthy today. All right. Here's a key. No sacks today for Dallas. Zero. I mean, we talked about Randy Gregory. We talked about DeMarcus Lawrence. We talked about Micah Parsons and his 13 sacks. And we talked about the 49ers offensive line being poor in pass protection, but, potentially a good run blocking unit. And we said, okay, the 49ers would have to take this to Dallas in this game, that they would have to play this game on their terms. And I think the 49ers absolutely did that. But for the no sacks, I mean, this is a team accomplishment. The offensive line obviously gets credit. They did a good job not allowing, too many free rushing opportunities at Jimmy Garoppolo. They had allowed a few, obviously, without Trent Williams against the Rams. So it was good to have Trent Williams back. He helped in that regard. But Jimmy Garoppolo gets credit for the no sacks in this game. He got rid of the ball on time, especially during that first half when he was really clicking. Debo Samuel, Elijah Mitchell, the run game deserves credit for those no sacks because the 49ers were churning offensively on the ground, and that takes the steam out of the pass rush. And obviously, Kyle Shanahan and his scheme deserve credit for the no sacks. So it's what we talk about when we say team win. The 49ers took a major Dallas strength, which is getting after the passer on the edge and creating havoc, creating turnovers, and they nullified that. The one takeaway that Dallas did have was Jimmy Garoppolo's fault. Garoppolo was rolling out, and I thought Shanahan schemed up a very completable throw for him, and Garoppolo sailed Brandon Ayuk, and obviously that gave second life to the Cowboys, opened the door there, and they almost came back, but they didn't. But as far as no sacks and playing this game on their terms, the 49ers absolutely did that. They were more efficient than Dallas, and they did great there. Now, as far as Jimmy Garoppolo goes, before people get too salty about his game. I already said this, but I have to put it up on the screen. If you want to look at a bad quarterback performance, look at Dak Prescott, not at Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo was actually a lot better today than Dak Prescott. In fact, we have the EPA breakdown here. Let's take a look at this. This will give an idea of the division in this game as far as quarterback efficiency goes. Garoppolo was very mediocre. First half, he was really good. Mediocre for the whole game. He added 1.5 expected points. His completion percentage was under expectation. His expected quarterback rating, QBR, was a little bit higher than you might expect, but whatever. It was on the aggregate, a so-so performance when we talk about efficiency. All right, now let's look at how horrifically bad Dak Prescott was. Cost his team 2 touchdowns worth of points. He was almost 10% under expected completion, and his QBR is going to be 21. At 50 is average, okay? It's on a 0 to 100 scale. 50 is average. Right? Prescott was ghastly. This wasn't a good performance. So, yes, Garoppolo missed Ayuk on that longer pass. He also threw that interception. Those two things, did they let Dallas back into the game? Of course they did. So did the fact that the 49ers had those bad special teams plays, the roughing the punter, obviously being one of them, and then their ill-preparedness for the fake punt. Neither of those two plays were good. But Garoppolo also did a lot of good things in the first half to put the 49ers in position to avoid Dallas sacks, score points, and jump out to that lead. So, I mean, you have to view this on the aggregate. And on the aggregate, the 49ers had a better quarterback than the Cowboys today. And I mean, I wrote about this over the course of the week. This is Dak Prescott's efficiency over the course of the season. EPA per play is expected points added. That takes into account down and distance and efficiency there, adjusted net yards per attempt, QBR, completion percentage over expectation, and then the right side is stylistic stat. So that's not really performance, but it just shows you, how far down the field Prescott is throwing. Red is bad, blue is good. Look at Prescott weeks 9 to 17 after his calf strain this year. He was below average. Red is bad in every single metric. So in our previews, when we talked about this entering the game, we said, hey, the 49ers, they've had a more efficient quarterback. This is Garoppolo, by the way, since week 8 when he turned it around. They had a more efficient quarterback than the Cowboys. You wouldn't know this if you followed Twitter too closely or watched too much of the national media. I mean, it seems like gospel. Oh, I'd rather have Dak Prescott than Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, this year, it's been sketchy for Dak Prescott. And at the end of the day, I'm not talking about individual quarterback talent. I mean, Dak, I saw him on the sideline. Guy's a truck. He's tough to bring down. Yeah, physically, obviously, a really, really impressive player out there. And the 49ers today, I think it was K'Wan Williams on one of those blitzes that was struggling to wrestle him down, and Prescott got the ball away. So obviously, from a physical perspective, he has some tools that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't. But what matters when we evaluate these teams, and what actually matters when teams play each other in the playoffs, and the wins and the losses are something that's relevant, which it should always be. What matters is how efficient each quarterback is within the context of his own offense. And Garoppolo entered this game more efficient within the context of the 49ers offense than Prescott had been within the context of the Dallas offense. And that's about as simple of a comparison as there was. And that played out in this game. Garoppolo was more efficient than Prescott, and the 49ers ended up winning the game. So that was huge to me. The 49ers shut down Dak today, and they did it with a great defensive performance, which I wrote about. The 49ers D-line has a chance at atonement against Green Bay. The 49ers defensive line, if you go back to week 3, that was 112 days ago. Remember that game? Going into it, everybody thought, oh boy, here it goes again. The 49ers defensive line, they're going to smother Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is on his third string left tackle. This is going to be 49ers domination. We're going to party like it's 2019 again. Well, that didn't end up happening, right, in week 3. It was Bosa getting chipped and then everybody else getting dominated by the Green Bay offensive line. So at that point, we were like, oh boy, this defensive line doesn't look nearly as good as what we thought it would look like. And there was a lot to blame on the 49ers secondary as well. They're committing PI like it was their job. And Aaron Rodgers was getting rid of the ball quickly to neutralize the 49ers defensive line. But the overarching point was the 49ers defense wasn't nearly as overpowering as it had been in 2019, even though there was a lot of hype and there was a lot of signs in training camp that at least that defensive front might be. The Packers jumped out to a lead against the 49ers. Then the 49ers offense roared back in the second half and made it a 28-27 game, but there were still 37 seconds left on the clock. So that sets the table for the biggest defensive failure of the year for the 49ers. There have been a couple of them against Tennessee. They gave up all those third downs, but there is no excuse. And I don't care if it's Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams on the other side. There's no excuse for giving up a game-winning score in 37 seconds when the opposing offense has to move like 40 yards and doesn't have a single timeout. But that's exactly what Aaron Rodgers did over the course of 2 completions. So there was worry about D'Amico Ryans and his ability to scheme as a rookie coordinator. There was worry about the 49ers pass rush since they couldn't do anything there. And there was a lot of worry about their coverage since they gave up those 2 completions for 42 yards to set up Mason Crosby's field goal. That loss for a long time looked like it would really, really haunt the 49ers because that's a tough loss. Jimmy Garoppolo on the offense leads you down to what should be the game-winning touchdown. Then your defense turns it on and blows it over 37 seconds against the fellow NFC contender. I mean, that's brutal, right? And for a long time, it looked like the 49ers would be haunted by that loss, but they barely got away from underneath that loss, right? They made that run, and then they beat the Rams in week 18, and now they beat the Cowboys. And now, very poetically, very fittingly, it's Green Bay back on the schedule. And I think this is a very different 49ers defensive line than the Packers faced back in week 3. Chris Kasarik has done a hell of a job developing this unit over the course of the season. Now, consider this. These seasons are so long. Like I just said, the Packers game week 3 was 112 days ago. That's 3.5 months ago, and that wasn't even week 1. And got to go even further back for the preseason and then training camp. It is so valuable to have a coaching staff that can develop guys because these seasons are so long. Like I've been saying every week when people freak out about a loss or get too high after a win, guys, every week, I know I say it. I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but these seasons are long novels and each game is a chapter. And when you have so many chapters in a long book, it's so valuable to have a defensive line coach like Chris Kasarik who can actually change the look of your team and his defensive line from week 3 to the playoffs or week 3 to week 12. And it's been a long project for Chris Kasarik. But this defensive line that's going to face the Packers next week after what they did to Dak Prescott and after what they did to Matthew Stafford the week before. I mean, these are two good offensive lines that the 49ers D-line has bullied 2 weeks in a row. I think they're going to look different against the Packers next week than they did in week 3. 14 quarterback hits against Prescott, 13 hits against Matthew Stafford last week. These are two of the best pass-protecting offensive lines in football that the 49ers worked. And this week, I think they were even better because Nick Bosa suffered that concussion early on. So I talk about a balanced pass rush. Look at this. This is average distance from the quarterback measured by NFL Next Gen Stats. Obviously, Bosa's not in there because he didn't play the full game. The average is 4.53 yards according to the tracking data. Charles Omenihu was 3.42 yards on average away from Dak Prescott today. Ebukam was 3.63 yards, way closer than average. Armstead, 4.18 yards. DJ Jones, even though he's a run-stopping specialist, closer than average at 4.44 yards. This is teamwork. This is a dominant pass rushing performance. I mean, you had Charles Omenihu, a guy who the 49ers traded peanuts for, right? Before the deadline. A 2023 sixth-round pick to Houston is all it cost for Charles Omenihu. And today he's beating Tyron Smith, an all-pro, 4-time all-pro left tackle, 8-time Pro Bowler, multiple times. So Omenihu stepped up way more reps than he normally gets because Bosa was out. Jordan Willis, when before he got hurt in the game, was getting a lot of reps today, and he was winning on the edges. Arden Key was normally a third down guy entering this game. He was playing a lot more. I mean, all of these guys stepped up. And it starts with a guy in the middle. Where are all the Eric Armstead haters now? I mean, you guys are just telling on yourselves over the course of several years, but especially since 2019. You're telling on yourself saying, I don't really know football if you're just going to go out there and try to trash Eric Armstead. An eminently versatile defensive lineman, can play inside and out, he started as an edge rusher and is now playing on the inside. And look what DJ Jones said about Eric Armstead. This should just really end any sort of debate. There never should have been one. But DJ Jones right here. He's the most important piece on this team to me. I think Eric Armstead is a force. He can play outside, inside. I think he's a phenomenal 3-tech. He can play 2-eye. He's a Swiss Army knife. And I love when he's inside with me. DJ Jones ranks number 1 in the NFL in run stop win rate by ESPN. Eric Armstead ranks number 3. The Dallas Cowboys today managed 77 rushing yards. Let's see what the average was. The 49ers have been the number 1 run defense since week 6, since the bye. That's since they lost Kinlaw. So they lose who's supposed to be their most dominant 3-technique interior lineman to the season, and they're the number 1 run defense since then. Let that sink in. Eric Armstead moves inside around that time, and DJ Jones literally says, I think he's the most important player on the team. And DJ Jones is not a guy to blow a lot of smoke. Today, the Dallas Cowboys averaged 3.7 yards per carry. There you go. They couldn't run the football. Maybe a little bit better than the Rams last week, but neither team could run. 49ers tee off of the pass rush. They hit Stafford and Prescott 13 and 14 times respectively, and the defensive line looks as overpowering as it was in 2019. The Dallas Cowboys were the number one offense scoring-wise in the league entering this game at 31.2 points per game. They managed 17. The Cowboys averaged 6 yards per play entering this game. They managed 4.4. 6 yards per play, by the way, ranked the Cowboys number 3 in the NFL in the season. Guess where 4.4 would have ranked them over the course of the full season? Last, dead last. So the 49ers took the number one scoring offense in the league and had to perform as if they were the worst offense in the league today. So this defense is back. This defense is this defense is firing, and guess what? It's a perfect time to get that measuring stick out and see how they do against Green Bay again. It wasn't good enough when they gave up 30 back in week 3. But I think this defense is a whole lot better. And we're going to put that theory to the test when the 49ers play at the Packers on Thursday. Again, Charles Omenihu, what a bargain bin trade. And bargain bin trades only work when you have good coaching. And Chris Kasarik is a good coach. Now, special teams mistakes remain inexcusable. This is Richard Hightower's unit. Roughing the punter is the last thing they could have had. Mark Nazacha incurred the penalty. 49ers defense held strong, gave up some field position. I mean, it did open a sliver for the Cowboys. And that wasn't good. But the most inexcusable play was the fake punt. The 49ers had already been burned by a fake punt at Seattle earlier this year. Especially when your defense is dominating the way that I'm talking about right now. You can't let that happen again. And it did happen again. And there were some kick returns that were a little too big after 49ers scores that happened again. And at this point, it's just like, well, the 49ers have a top 5 offense, a top 10 defense, but the special teams ranked number 27 per DVOA during the regular season. I mentioned the saving grace at the top of the show. It is that Green Bay's special teams ranks number 32, dead last in the league. So what's going to happen there? That's my big question. Is Green Bay going to, be even worse on special teams than the 49ers? We'll see. But today, the 49ers won in spite of their special teams unit, which just wasn't good enough. Finally, what happened to CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper? The prevailing national narrative was that the 49ers cornerbacks wouldn't be able to handle these guys. Ambry Thomas would be overwhelmed by the playoff spotlight, and CeeDee Lamb and Cooper would eat him alive, and Emmanuel Moseley, wouldn't be enough to help. Well, Amari Cooper won one major battle. It was the touchdown against K'Wan Williams. Came out of the slot. But CeeDee Lamb only had one catch. And it's, I spent a good 10 minutes right now talking about the 49ers pass rush, but rush and coverage work together. And the 49ers coverage worked really, really well in this game. The reason you didn't hear Ambry Thomas's name is because he was technique sound. The coverage was good. Emmanuel Moseley missed a really tough tackle early, but then he was just rock solid, making stops in the open field. So you have to give credit where it's due. And K'Wan Williams obviously atoned for the touchdown that he gave up with the interception while he was covering Cedric Wilson Jr. Jaquiski Tart, when the 49ers were in cover 0, had good coverage downfield on that key 4th and 11. Speaking of cover 0, D'Amico Ryans played. He didn't play today, but he called a hell of a game, and he's growing as the season goes along. I asked Kyle Shanahan about this, but the 49ers blitzed 10 times. And it seems that every single blitz that D'Amico Ryans calls nowadays works. It seemed that all 10 of them worked in this game. And remember, the 49ers were getting picked apart by the Titans on 3rd and long, even though the Titans were max protect, and the 49ers should have had more than enough DBs to cover what the Titans were bringing. Well, despite, what happened there, D'Amico Ryans is let's rewind. What happened there was inexcusable, right? The 49ers, you can't give up 3rd and 12 so many times like they did at Tennessee. But you didn't see D'Amico Ryans just falter after that. You saw him improve after that. He's grown as a defensive coordinator. And today, and against the Rams, he's decided to mix up the coverages and mix up the defensive strategy. And he's done it by bringing blitzes at opportune times. Now, you only have a certain amount of blitz bullets, especially against good quarterbacks. And Shanahan pointed this out when I asked him. He said, if you show Dak Prescott a look too many times, a blitz look too many times, he's going to burn you with it. But today, D'Amico Ryans was on top of his P's and Q's. And he didn't overshow any blitzes, but he still blitzed quite a bit, 10 times today. And he put his money on the table. 4th and 11. I mean, that's the type of situation that got the 49ers killed in Tennessee about 3 weeks ago, right? Tannehill sat back, max protect on 3rd and long and picked them apart. 4th and 11 is a down where a lot of defensive coordinators will crawl into a shell, go into a prevent like defense. Not this time. D'Amico Ryan sent the house. He sent Jimmy Ward. He sent a linebacker. It was cover zero on the back end. Everybody was on an island alone. Jaquaski Tart was on the island alone. And Tart got the job done, but so did the rushers. Jimmy Ward got the hit on Dak Prescott and made sure that was going to be a really hard pass to complete. So credit to D'Amico Ryans for gluing it all together. You have rush, you have coverage, but then you have to have the coordinator making sure the interplay between rush and coverage, which happens at the point of blitz, is good. And you have to make sure you're surprising a guy like Dak Prescott. And, it's now to the point where the 49ers, I don't think they're facing the final boss yet. Maybe the final boss will be Brady in the NFC Championship game, right? But for the 49ers defense, you've moved on to the next boss if you're playing a video game. And that next boss is Aaron Rodgers. And he's really good, obviously. I mean, Hall of Famer. So is Brady. It's just Brady would be symbolically the final boss in the NFC for the 49ers. I know Rodgers is really, really good. And I remember games the 49ers have lost to Rodgers because he's identified the blitzes the 49ers have brought in to attack them mercilessly right at the vacated spot. So it's going to get harder moving forward. But Prescott's good with that kind of stuff. And the 49ers won in that regard today. So complete team win. 49ers football is indeed torture. I will answer a few questions, but I'm sure there's a ton of comments. And I'm sure there's a ton of arguing. I don't want to wade into it. I just like to make these videos as informative as possible. But it was, they beat Dallas on the road in the playoffs in an upset, according to Vegas, and they're moving on to Green Bay. If you're a 49ers fan, it's a lot that you should be happy about. 49ers were in control most of the game. It wasn't even really a game until the fake punt and the Jimmy interception. Yeah, the 49ers won this game decisively statistically. And yes, the turnover was bad. Remember, Garoppolo's still playing with a torn ligament in his thumb. Nobody's really talking about it anymore, but it might not be a coincidence that he missed the throw to Ayuk and, then the interception throw later in the game, whereas he was sharp earlier. That thumb could have started acting up. I got a cool picture here that I'll show you guys. Jimmy Garoppolo's entire family and a lot of his Eastern Illinois roommates were all there after the game in the tunnel. So they had a nice little Garoppolo party, and I guess a lot of them are coming next week to Green Bay as well. So, they're all happy, and, a playoff win is a playoff win. Yeah, that's the bottom line. You can nitpick this all you want, but they beat a good football team on the road, and Dallas was going to have their own. It's ironic because Garoppolo's interception came because of a ball he just missed on the throw instead of Dallas actually forcing the pick, confusing him. Garoppolo was on top of his P's and Q's essentially all game. So that probably should be an encouraging sign for the 49ers if you think about it in that way. But the mistake happened. The 49ers overcame it, and Garoppolo also did a lot of good stuff, especially in the first half of this game. That's just the reality. You have to look at it on the aggregate. He was better than Dak Prescott today. So sometimes you got to win ugly, especially in the postseason. So the 49ers were, this was a good win, and the 49ers will move forward with Garoppolo joining Kaepernick and Montana and Brody as the only quarterback to helm a playoff win. All right. No, the 49ers will not stay in the Central Time Zone. I think they're already flying back, and they may already be back in the Bay Area now. They'll practice for 3 days and probably fly out on Thursday to Appleton, Wisconsin before they play Green Bay. All right. One more question, and then I'm going to do a separate Q&A. I've already been going for 34 minutes, and I need to start watching some film. It's already 2:30 a.m. here. Yeah, Kyle, you're talking about Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan, one drive, in reference to this question, there was one drive where he had a 4th down that I thought he could have gone for it in the first half, but he didn't. But there were, the ones that ended field goals. Dallas is a good defense. They were number 2 in DVOA. They had Dan Quinn. He's familiar with the 49ers offense. they're going to stop the 49ers sometime. They're going to be ready for some of the bootlegs. Every single punt or every single field goal settle is not an indictment of Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo. You got to view this thing in the big picture and compare them against other teams. Other offenses failed. I mean, the Buffalo Bills became the first team in NFL history on Saturday to not punt, not kick a field goal, and not turn the ball over all game. They scored a touchdown every single time to touch the ball. But the point is, that's the first time that's ever happened. That's extremely unusual. And if that's going to be your standard, you're gonna be driven crazy. 49ers were efficient offensively in the first half, inefficient, past the Debo touchdown in the second half. I mean, epic cutback run. Let's talk about Debo Samuel and how good he is, right? Epic cutback. Reminded me of Reggie Bush in college, except Reggie Bush did that against Fresno State. Debo Samuel did this against the Dallas Cowboys. But after that, yeah, the 49ers were iffy offensively. These are long games against good teams. It's going to happen. They still won, and they're still confident going into next week against Green Bay. So it's going to be really interesting on how this all pans out. All right, guys, thanks for all your comments and all your questions. I hope you enjoyed the show. How does Jimmy go from being so super crisp to being so sloppy? Well, Dallas is a good team. They make adjustments too. Garoppolo's playing with a torn ligament in his thumb. So, he missed two throws. There are two throws that you're like, those hurt. The one to Ayuk that could have sealed the game, and the one to, I think it was intended for Ayuk again, right? But it went to Dallas for the interception. I don't know what to tell you. He wasn't perfect all game. Dak Prescott was a lot worse. I think Aaron Rodgers probably will miss some throws next week for Green Bay. It's going to be cold out there. We'll see how that goes. Maybe Garoppolo plays the game of his life, doesn't miss any throws. But over the long run, on the aggregate, Garoppolo's been efficient this year. The 49ers are happy to have him, and they're happy that they had him and not Dak Prescott against the Cowboys yesterday. That's all I could really say about that. All right, guys, everybody take care. You guys are the best. Sorry that I didn't answer everybody's question. There's just too many of them coming in right now. We'll hold a dedicated Q&A for these a little bit later. All right, everybody, 49ers beat the Cowboys. Let's keep it in perspective right now. That was crazy. They win in Jerry World. Watch the other videos from the behind the scenes. A lot of cool stuff there. Hope you guys enjoyed the coverage. We'll be coming to you from the Bay Area this week, and then obviously from Green Bay this weekend. Everybody take care. Thanks again.